Hey everybody, welcome to the Patty G Show inside of the Velocity Partners Group studio here, recording a fantastic episode with Gaines Garrett, talking about shredding, talking about e-security, and also a very educational episode about how we should properly dispose of our household electronics that we are probably doing wrong and need to find a solution for immediately. So all that to come in this episode. Want to give a big, wonderful shout out and thank you to our amazing partners in the community: Lakeman's Health Center, Valaya Real Estate, PB&J Productions, and Velocity Partners Group. Enjoy the episode. Okay, so you said companies.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a plethora of companies that you're managing and operating here?
We do, yeah. So Secure Shredding and Recycling is obviously a legacy what I would refer to as like one of our legacy companies. So it was actually founded by my stepdad.
Okay.
And so he was in the record storage business after that was kind of his retirement when he decided to get out of the financial services industry and move back to Baton Rouge. They bought, he and a couple of college buddies bought a record center that was in Lafayette. And when he bought a small record center here in Baton Rouge to kind of expand that, they had a single shred truck. And this would have been 2009.
Okay.
And so fast forward a few years. In fact, one of my first college jobs was driving back and forth to Lafayette during the summer and implementing a new software package in their record center. And so I had familiarity with what he was doing, had familiarity with the business, and then used the shredding business that he started in 2013 after the records company was sold. And the folks that bought the records company did not do shredding at the time. And so they didn't want the shred truck. So he decided he would see what he could do with it. And I was finishing up my MBA and decided to use that as a case study for a business plan.
Okay.
And ended up going a different direction early in my career and built a manufacturing business with some college friends. And when we sold that in 2017, my stepdad was now 4 years into having the shredding business and had a couple of trucks and a small warehouse, and basically said, we've either got to get this thing ready to sell or we've got to grow it. And so I decided to join up with them and see what we could do. And we ended up in October of that year actually buying our largest local competitor, which really gave us our first bit of initial scale.
Yeah. So you had a manufacturing business that you created with some buddies before going into this shredding business with your father-in-law.
My stepdad.
Your stepdad.
Yes.
Your stepdad. So what were y'all manufacturing?
We were a large part vacuum former. So it started out with the dream of making a fishing kayak before those kind of got really popular. And then we ended up making all kinds of, fun stuff that we would sell to, through sporting goods and retailers and to, other distributors around the country.
Gotcha. So going through the sales process of a business, how was that experience?
Well, I've done it several times now, and some are better than others.
Okay.
For sure. You're always kind of looking at how to maximize that value, and whether that be because, you need to get out from under it for one reason or another, or because, it's going really well, but you've kind of taken it full circle, right? I always say this, we've kind of ended up in this space where we're comfortable building, smaller companies into lower middle market or middle market type companies. And then, we're not true private equity in that sense. We're operators. So at some point, that capital constraint makes it to where it's probably someone else is a better tool for the job.
So then you just get out while you can and hopefully maximize that profit.
Yeah, and we don't have a specific hold period or timeline. I mean, we've had secure shredding now for my stepdad exited in 2023. And so that was when we kind of put it under this broader umbrella. We've got a fantastic leadership team there. Janae being part of that, who's with us here today, and big plans for that company. But we'll at some point, someone will come along and say, we want this really bad. And so we'll have to look at that. But we got a lot more growing to do.
Yeah. So the shredding company is kind of the main, or one of the main companies you're really pushing to grow rather than get to a bow tied type of spec to sell.
Yeah. And, we're always looking for sustainable growth. Right. And so, as I mentioned, at some point, a company gets large enough that it really becomes more about either building their bureaucracy required to manage that type of stuff, and that's not the fun part for me. So
it's getting it to that point.
That's right. Yeah. And so, that's really, it's just this recognition of what we've honed our skills to be as a team. And once we get it to that point, it's not any one business that, or any one sort of dollar amount that we have in mind. It's just, you kind of know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's truth in businesses of a certain size can operate in a nimble and cross job way, right? So you could have one person doing 3 or 4 different job tasks across different, I guess, sections of the business, right? And then when you get to a certain size, you now have to start establishing true departments in order to scale it properly, right? You can't have one person doing 8 different jobs. It's like, no, you need 2 people. Now we got to split y'all. Okay, you need to focus on this division, you focus on this division, and then it really gets bucketed. And at that point, that's when you're saying is, hey, we got it to this point. Now somebody can really come in here, formalize it, standardize it, put a bunch of procedures in place, and really, really elevate the thing.
Yeah, and I think we take it pretty far down that road. So, we're not, we're building businesses that could be a platform for someone that's buying what they refer to as middle market type private equity stuff. So, there becomes a point where our team has created the bulk of the value that we're going to create. And that type of CEO that goes to $1 billion is oftentimes different than the CEO that gets you to 100 or 150 million.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, that's, we feel like taking companies from, 3, 5, 10 million to 100 million is more in our wheelhouse.
Yeah. That's like the exciting days, right? Because you're still trying to figure out, okay, how are we really going to solve this? And then it's when you get to that 100 million, it's like, okay, now we're almost institutional. Like we've got to really change the way we think.
That's exactly right. And so from a capital perspective and a capital allocation perspective, we really view ourselves as taking an institutional approach. Mm-hmm. But if you also look at the opportunity set, I mean, look where we are. There's not a ton of $100 million businesses to go out and start and say, okay, well, let's get really good at taking $100 million businesses to $1 billion.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there are a lot of really good foundational service, B2B family businesses that these people have created tremendous value. But need that sort of next level to help them eventually to a true, what we would say, middle market exit.
Yeah. Well, you've got the family businesses have done generations generally before they sell, or that's the hope, right? You don't have the first generation go and then sell it. It's second or third. They come in and they're like, okay, mom and dad did this, grandma and grandpa did this, and they got it to $1 million, right? They crossed that first seven digits. They bought it and they said, man, we're going to take this and really grow it. Some of them can be very successful with it and get it all the way up to whatever number they want. But most of them get in there and they're like, man, we're grinding. We're trying to leverage the relationships that have been built, and we get it to 3, 4, 5, or 10. And it's like, okay, we can't, to your point, there's a different CEO that steps in at 100 that gets it to $1 billion. Same thing there. It's like there's these different stepping off points of you need to change your management because you're still thinking in the way of the smaller business now to set a broader scale. So they got to get some advisor, get somebody else to help you take it up there, or ultimately exit, go on and do something else,
Yeah, and I think that's why you see this term serial entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
You've got guys that are really great, and in my view, the first 10 million is probably the hardest.
Absolutely.
Just because you're so resource limited in a lot of ways, and so have an incredible amount of respect for startups. I've lived through that, but there's an aspect of a lot of times those people that can get that done, they don't want to have the constraints of, well, now I'm over 50 people and HR is a really big deal because we've got Affordable Care Act or we've got this or that or whatever, and so these different things that you never wanted to deal with because you were busy building and selling, right? Now they become important, and they can really kill you as a business if you're not prepared to execute on putting those processes in place that allow you to take that next step. And I think one of the things that we have always tried to do and been successful with is that in a lot of cases that may be the founder's issue, but the leadership teams can often, buy in to growing into that next phase, right? And so if we can provide the right structure, support, training, access to the right people that have done it and can show you how to go from being tactical to strategic, right? Because that's really the shift that happens. Right. You go from being whatever you want to call yourself, right? A COO, for example, of a $3 million company to which is really a tactical role. You're in it every day with your guys and girls. And so but a COO of a $10 million company or a 12 or a $20 million company, that's really a strategic role. And so that transition is one that we love to see people be able to make, and so that's the challenge that we like to look for.
Yeah, because it's that first 10 million, you've got to build the brand, you got to build the name, you got to build the product if it's something unique, and people have to buy into that as consumers. When you get to that stepping off point where you're like, hey, you're at 10 million, you've already built some of that. You've already got a great customer base that are loyal to you. They know the name, they know what you're going to do. Let us now scale.
Sure.
And it's like before then, though, you're grinding for every single dollar that you can get because people still may not know who you are, what you do, what's your service, what's your product. And yeah, every C-suite executive they're in there every single day grinding it out with the whole team. And then it's tough to go from there to then taking the step back and like, okay, I've got to rely on the team we've built to really handle this because you were in it from day one, or hopefully day one in the trenches of just grinding it and building it out. It's challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have to go focus on things like, okay, well now, secure shredding is a great example, right? Now we are looking at things and we're saying, well, what are we've built this trust. We've built this network of 5,000 plus customers, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, by the way.
We've grown to support from Texas to Florida, really focused on data security and compliance and taking care of customers and making sure that they were offloading that risk for them, right? And so then you start to ask yourselves, okay, well, strategically, what are the things that we could be doing to build on that trust that we've created? And I think that's where the electronics recycling and ITAD became very attractive for us.
Okay, so let's go into that part, the ITAD and electronic recycling. How did that kind of? I mean, it makes sense when you're in the disposal business, right? You're disposing of paper copies, and now you're disposing of actual assets that they no longer need. How did that come about, and walk us through that transition or that addition?
So I think it's been sort of a slower adoption over time for the customer. And what I mean by that is everyone, because it's been around for so long, everyone knows what a paper shredding console looks like. You put the paper in the console and the company shows up once a month and they empty it and shred it in the parking lot in the truck. And then it became this thing was like, oh, I have these hard drives and I know there's this data on these hard drives. And so whether you have a third party MSP or whether you have one or two internal IT people, maybe they're pulling hard drives and they're at least saying, okay, well, we need to shred these hard drives or destroy these hard drives, right? But the issue has become, what do you do with the rest of it? What do you do about integrated memory? What do you do about SSDs? So that as the technology has developed, it's become this really kind of weird and scary thing. And so people just throw it away. And that's become a bigger problem. So I'll share a stat with you that I think most people are just completely unaware of. 60% of hazardous waste in non-hazardous landfills is electronic waste.
Okay.
So think about that. It makes up about 2% of the total volume of waste, but it makes up 60% of the hazardous waste in non-hazardous landfills. You're talking about batteries, heavy metal leaching, all these issues, right, that come from that. And so we are improperly disposing of over 80% of electronics are improperly disposed of. And so this isn't brand new information. There was a 60 Minutes done in the mid 90s where it was this picture that came out that were these kids, and I believe it was in Malaysia, and they're just standing on piles of scrapped, old CRT monitors, like the really old desktop monitors, which are hugely hazardous, right? Like that's one item that we actually still have to pay to dispose of, our CRT monitors. But and so you've got this component of it that is becoming really meaningful from a waste generation standpoint. So before we started, we were talking about, think about how many devices you have compared to how many you used to have.
A lot.
You probably couldn't even tell me off the top of your head how many electronic devices you have, especially if I said include anything that has user-defined data. Your thermostat has user-defined data at this point, I bet, right?
You've got thermostat, you've got Wi-Fi routers, Wi-Fi extenders, you've got smart TVs, you've got any plugins to the smart TVs, gaming consoles, iPhones, however many you've got, iPads, however many you got, laptops, however many you got, additional tablets, Alexas, smart home hubs.
It's overwhelming.
If I had to guess, I'm over 20 at this point, just within my wife and I.
On an individual basis, or as a couple, right, or as a family. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you start to say, okay, well, what's really happening here is you have the fastest growing waste stream in the world at 8% a year. 80% of it is being improperly disposed of, and it's creating all these negative effects. Well, the most strange part of it is that there is enough value in those devices that they can be recycled or reused without subsidy. And so why the regulatory frameworks haven't caught up yet is kind of surprising to me. Only about half the states, and this is always kind of a challenge in the U.S. is just everything's done at the state level in a lot of ways, which is great and for a lot of things, but also only half the states have any type of e-waste regulation, and so that's growing and changing, right? But here in Louisiana, we have nothing on the books as it relates to e-waste. And so, you've got companies out there that are willing to essentially pick it up for free, right? Because it has so much value. You've got the ability to have all this rare earth recapture, which means you need to mine less of it. You've got the ability to reuse, which is the greatest way to really benefit the circular economy is reuse, right? So that has almost zero negative impact on the environment when something is just refurbished and reused. So all that value is still intrinsic in that item that is either end of life or surplus for you. And yet, instead of, we've got to get people educated that sending it to the right place is not any more expensive and significantly less harmful to the environment. And I say this sometimes, and I really don't view it as hyperbole. When you think about where we're headed with AI and these data centers, and just the sheer volume of devices, that's still really only about 20% of the global population.
Yeah.
Right. So as things become easier and easier to get, and all 8 billion people now have devices, and they are throwing these devices away, you don't have an environmental problem. You have a humanitarian problem.
Yeah, you've got a global problem.
Right. You've got hazardous materials going into places that they shouldn't be. And that creates a humanitarian problem as much as it is an environmental problem. And so, I think that's something that the public needs to be made aware of, specifically because the economics of it are such that it doesn't cost you any more to dispose of it properly. In some cases, you might actually get some money back.
Okay, so on the education piece, right? So we generally have been growing up in society, especially in like America, that you have two waste bins, right? You got your trash can and your recycling bin, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's no education on are the batteries that are done from the kids' toys supposed to go in the trash can? Or are they supposed to go somewhere else? Oh, if their tablet or this breaks, Apple will buy it back, or just send it back. We'll pay for postage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's what happens to the other devices. You either donate them to Goodwill or you donate them to another company or something. And then what do they do with them? So it's like, how do we go and establish this protocol of here's what to do with X, Y, and Z products? Batteries being probably one of the biggest ones. I don't know if they have a reusable life at some point. Your traditional AA, AAA, like your everyday use ones that people go through probably hundreds in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are specific, facilities that are specialized in battery recycling. And so those would be downstream of us. We're more on the collection side. And then as we take things apart or break them into individual components, we're going to go and we're going to sell, this particular commodity or category to this downstream and this other one to another. Right. And so there are certain batteries. Again, there are CRT monitors. TVs are a negative value item, believe it or not, because of the hazardous materials in TVs. And there's just not enough. They've gotten so light, right? And that there's not enough value in the boards that are in TVs to offset that. But across all categories, there's so few things that are actually negative value items that, again, if we start pushing everything through these R2 certified or Rio certified channels, and we can get a little bit more into what that means, but basically it's guaranteeing that this stuff is not being landfilled. It's guaranteeing that your data is not going to end up overseas, right? And so, when you look at that as a broader category, we can absorb the cost of those negative value items without subsidy from the government. And so, what the waste bin and the recycling bin that you're familiar with, right? You probably know this, but most of that paper, fiber, cardboard, plastic, it ends up in the landfill anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And so why? Because it does relatively little harm. I mean, we want more landfill diversion, right? We need less tonnage in landfills, but most of that stuff does relatively little harm in a non-hazardous landfill. Electronics, not so much. And so, there's also the issue of, you see these billion-dollar municipal recycling facilities, these MRFs that are going bankrupt all over the place. When the regulations change and they're not getting, as many cents on the bottle as they used to, right? And so, those things that require subsidy, we've got to figure out a way to deal with those. But, electronics, where we sit today, there's a huge opportunity to do it without that and without relying on government support.
So how do you go about getting the everyday person bought in, aware, familiar with how to handle this stuff? I mean, because they're getting whatever it is, it's broken and whatnot, and they're just throwing it away. How do you change that mentality to say, hey, instead bring it here?
Sure.
We used to have like whenever we would have a monitor or something go bad, we used to bring it and put it out of a place off of downtown here.
Mm-hmm.
That would take in monitors.
Capital Area Computer Recycling Center. Yeah. CACRC. So they're a nonprofit. So those are great spots to start. But one of the things that we are seeing in other communities that we're working to bring here, and have had some success. So the Better Business Bureau has a couple events a year. It used to just be a shred day. We've always had done on-site document destruction for those. Now we've added e-waste collection to that.
Okay.
And so we're promoting that in a big way. In Alabama, where we have a location in Birmingham, they do 12 events a year. So basically one a month.
Yeah.
And they're in different locations around Jefferson County, and the surrounding areas where, we'll collect at the biggest one, we'll collect 30 tons of electronics.
What does that boil down to in like number of monitors or something?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's 60,000 pounds.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So monitors,
so
a
you're
pound
thinking,
or 2
you're
pounds.
talking, you're talking, you're talking 6 box trucks full of gear.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So, it really is, we partnering with the community. We have Better Business Bureau here in Baton Rouge, Parish Proud in Lafayette. We just started with them last year and are getting that kicked off. So it's an educational process. But it's also, I think, can be helped by businesses getting on board and understanding that there are regulations coming, and, they're not going to chase down the individual resident that threw their TV in their garbage can. But, if businesses get caught improperly disposing, they're really, and those are the generators. I mean, those are the people generating it in more volume because they're turning over dozens of PCs or laptops or things like that. And so you got to start where the volume is and work your way down from there.
Welcome to the brand new Falaya mobile app. We took all the same tech that's helped hundreds of people sell their homes themselves and packed it into an easy-to-use app for your phone. When you download the Falia mobile app on either the Apple or Android App Store, you'll immediately be able to see the power of this game-changing tool. From the seller's dashboard, you can navigate to all the information that you need. We intentionally separated everything into key groups, such as tasks to be completed, buyer leads for your listing, and contact information for everyone involved through closing. When you get an offer on your property, you can simply review and respond all within the app. No matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to monitor everything that's going on with your property from listed to sold. It's truly the power of Falia in the palm of your hand. Download the app and see for yourself. Falia, it's real estate reimagined.
Yeah, I mean, you got most businesses going out behind where the dumpster is with a hammer and the hard drives and just smash them till they think that they're satisfied with the level of destruction, and then just tossing it in the dumpster.
Right.
And that's the solution.
And the current price per pound, right, for hard drives, for traditional 3.5-inch hard drives, is about 72 cents a pound. So at volume, why aren't we recapturing that and injecting that back into the economy?
Yeah.
Right. And getting those rare earths, re-refined, and then using those to create new electronics, because that's what's destroying the environment more quickly than anything, is the mining of new rare earths. And we've got all this capacity sitting right there in the existing, waste stream.
So is there a point in time in which those hard drives become really unusable at all? Or are there always at least something to gain out of them at any age, any stage?
So it just depends. A traditional hard drive like that will always have value. I mean, the boards on them have value. The shredded components have value for the smelters and the refiners. You start looking at things like SSDs, less so. But again, from a refurbishment perspective, have more value. You look at things like, some of these GPUs and, things that are having less and less rare earths introduced to them. They will be taking those back for the silicon, for example, right? So, there will always be a second life for most electronics, just because of the intrinsic value of not just last generation stuff, right? But also because of the way that they're manufactured.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the element of it that we often don't give a lot of credit to, is the melting and remanufacturing with those devices. So, for example, you get an old Apple Watch as an example, right? They get new versions. Your phones, they get old, outdated. You get a new one, you're stuck with the old one. Now they've gotten better about it, I feel, over the last couple of years, where they send you the return box to send them the phone back. But if you've got an Apple Watch, they're just, oh no, we will take it back, but there's no credit or anything like that they give you. But it's true, even though it's outdated, you can't necessarily maybe refurbish it, reinstall a new iOS on it or something. But melting it back down to create a whole new product would be, I guess, its second life.
That's correct. And so when you look at that, what you're seeing with those OEMs is they have folks in the marketplace, third-party providers, that are doing that, right? And so some of our downstreams that we work with, we own another downstream company. We have relationships with OEMs that's like, yeah, it's their buyback program, but then they turn around and hand it off to a third party who is either going to take it apart and get it to the refiners, or refurbish it and get it back into the marketplace, right? And so that's a lot of cases where they're taking that phone or that watch or whatever that device is, and they are making sure that it is properly either reused or recycled.
Yeah. Which is,
and even though there may not be direct dollars in it for the consumer, right? You don't have to pay to dispose of it either, which is really where we're going to end up if we're not careful.
right. Because then we're going to get to a point where it's going to be out of control at some point.
Yeah.
You know,
And maybe I shouldn't say you're not having to pay to dispose of it, because you if you're throwing it in the trash, you're paying to dispose of it.
yeah, you're still paying your trash and your garbage fee.
Right. Whether you're a person or whether you're an individual or you're a business, you're getting charged by the pound, essentially, by the ton, if you're a business. And so, you know, you'd save money on the front end as well.
Right. And you'd also be able to say that you can attribute your organization's recycling plan is to get those devices back to a place where they can have a second life potentially.
Absolutely. And we, you know, a lot of large companies, I mean, you know, the ESG sort of craze has, you know, temporarily been kind of quieted. But I don't think that's for the long term, you know, going to last, because we still deal with tons of organizations that want their landfill diversion numbers. And so whether that's on the electronic side or on the paper side, you know, we process about 1,200,000 pounds of paper every month.
A month?
Yeah. And
Wow.
so, and all of that goes back and it's recycled.
Okay. So what is that process?
So what happens is first we shred everything and then we bale it. And once it's baled, we load trucks that only carry baled paper. And so they're full truckloads of baled paper. We do about one a day, and a little over one a day when you look at our loose drops in locations, you know, around the Southeast. But and then that goes back to the mill, and it's turned into what they call either white towel or brown towel. So it's your lower grade tissue products. Like if you think hand towels in the bathroom, you know, that are kind of tan looking.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
so
the brown towels.
that's
yeah.
brown towel.
Okay.
And then white towel would be like your a little bit higher grade, like, you know, airline toilet paper or hotel toilet paper type feedstock.
Okay.
And so that is typically what we call sorted office product or sorted office waste is going to be turned into back at the mill.
Okay.
So, but when you look at the number of trees, the barrels of oil, you know, that equates to over time, it's very significant at those tonnages.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, you also have the element of when you have all that paper and all that shredding, right? So like when you have the situation of COVID come around where everybody had to get digital real quick, how many organizations had to figure out a plan of how do we get our files that are paper electronic?
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're electronic, what do we do with them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so not everybody's got a big shredder in their office where they're going to shred it. And even if they do, they're going to put it in bags and then put it in the garbage can or their dumpster and then get rid of it. And that way, and it's not having that recycled use, which is very valuable to have those other products that can be used to then, oh yeah, let's take all this paper and reuse it instead of having to cut down new trees and harvest whole new forests for it.
Absolutely. And that's where the second life of paper, you know, it's not becoming a piece of paper that you write on.
Well, I guess that's the
misconception is like, well, we're going to a paperless society. No, we're not going to a tissueless society. Right?
You still gotta blow your nose into something.
Yeah, like I at least I hope not. You know, so that's kind of the thing is, yeah, sure, there's less volume of paper coming out, but that drives the cost up of tissue products.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go backwards, like how kids just wipe their noses on their sleeves. You know, we'll just revert to that methodology.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know what it would look like in an airplane bathroom, but I travel enough and I don't want to find out. So.
Exactly. And I think that's the element that people often forget is like they think of paper in the writing space, the notebook space, the workspace, the school space. And it's like, oh yeah, we got all this paper, all the stuff the kids draw on and everything. And it's like, yeah, that's such a high use worth of paper. It's like, well, no, but not every bathroom has an airless hand dryer or a paperless hand dryer. Not every bathroom is hooked up with a bidet system that you're not going to use any paper. And so it's like you're using paper in 2 instances there in the restroom. How many restaurants still operate with paper napkins and not actual cloth napkins? And then every other element that is paper that we're coming into contact with, we just forget about for some reason. Packing paper. Yeah. You know, all those orders we place online, they pack it with paper most times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what you see is, you know, the fiber market fluctuates, you know, significantly based on demand. And what you're talking about too is on packaging, old corrugated cardboard or OCC. Is we get a ton of that, because if you think about the number, you know, a lot of times we're picking this stuff up in boxes. So we're going to your storage facility or your record center, and it's in a box. Well, all of that gets recycled too. So 100% of what's in there is going to be diverted from the landfill in that case, and so that's really important because when you look at the sheer volume of Amazon deliveries that show up at my house. And I love you, honey. But when you look at that and you say, if we had to cut down a bunch of trees every time we needed some, you know, cardboard, we're gonna have a problem.
Oh yeah. Right. So they're able to be rediverted and made into that cardboard packaging.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Lake Men's Health Center with Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group. Guys, I know it's tough to get out and go to the doctor. I know it's challenging to find time in our busy days, but I promise you, signing up to be a part of this group with Dr. Curtis Chastain and Dr. Tyler Boudreau, you won't regret it for several reasons, but most of those being the fact of the time it saves, where you're able to get in on the same day, get that appointment done, and spend that time you need to talk with them about what your health goals and concerns are, as well as ensuring that the financial investments you have, you will be able to live out and see those come to fruition. So if you're an investing guy, you know all about and planning for the future and investing in the future. There's no other more important thing to invest in than your health. Make sure you go check them out, Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group Men's Health Center, and tell them Patty G sent you.
So then what about their new thin envelopes that they're now using for certain packaging?
Yeah, so again, you know, there's some plastic components there, but we would shred those.
Okay.
You know, because you can have a certain amount of, you know, a certain percentage of plastic in your paper waste that's acceptable to the mills.
Okay. So as far as getting the paper,
yeah, and then that's like a heavy stock, card stock.
Oh, it's I just saw the head, or we got a package the other day, and it was almost like a heavy cardstock, but then it was like two different packages. They had their old plastic, their white and blue plastic, and then they had their brown packaging on top of it. So I'm like, okay, I guess they're running out of the old white and blue, and now they're changing to this cardstock style.
Yeah.
And then saying, you know, reuse this, or they've tried to do their best to send reusable packaging because they know the returns are insane.
What they're trying to do, because that stuff, you know, again, is the cost of it and the environmental impact around it. You know, you're seeing where when you tear it open, you've got the ability to fold it over one more time to return whatever, you know, in a lot of cases. And so, but that heavy cardstock is made from recycled fiber. You know, so that's really, we got into this business to protect people's data. And that's still like our guiding principle, right? Is, you know, we want to provide you with a service that everyone needs. I mean, you know, there are all types of scams being run out there, and they're just getting more and more sophisticated. And so the last thing you need is any paper or any hard drives or any solid state drive showing up somewhere that it shouldn't be, and exposing your customers' data, right? But to be able to do that in a way that also creates opportunities for others, and diverts this waste from the landfill is a serious added bonus.
Right, because if you were just going to incinerate it, you're not getting that additional second level of life.
That's right.
That you would had you gone through a recyclable process with the paper.
And so, you hear this sometimes, but I don't know that people really think about what it means. We're trying to bridge the technology divide, right? That's kind of a coined phrase. We're bridging the technological divide, right? How are we doing that? We're doing it with refurbished equipment. We're doing it with equipment that, was no longer useful for the guy that has the most powerful gaming console or CAD program or whatever that, right? But certainly a kid could do their homework on it,
yes.
Right? Certainly a kid could get exposure to, the world that opens up for you when you start interacting with AI chatbots or with Google or with, so that is a big piece of giving those electronics that second life, is that the vast majority of the world's population can't afford a brand new, especially now. Look at prices.
It's insane.
A brand new OEM Apple laptops up 25-30% in the last 6 months. So, and that's because of the components. It's because of the expenses. It's because of the cost of gold, the cost of silver, the cost of manufacture, and the ability even to manufacture, right? So like we can't make enough RAM for the new gen stuff fast enough. And so what you're seeing is refurbished prices rising, which means we need to make sure that we're capturing even more of that waste stream so that we can remain affordable, right? Because now it's like everyone that is competing for these refurbished devices, now that's pushing prices out of range for those that are most impacted by this gap in the technology, right? Or this divide in access to technology. And so if we were capturing 80% of the waste stream instead of 20% of the waste stream, we'd be better off. But so that's what we're trying to do at Secure Shredding and e-recycling.
Yeah, is getting at least working on that split a little bit better each year.
Yeah,
it's not
it's not going to happen overnight. No. But if we could invert it, then it opens up opportunity and has very positive impacts on the global environment.
Yeah, I mean, at least getting people to think about it in a way that they haven't in the past. It hasn't been a thing of thought because we haven't gotten to the volume that we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. Like if you interact with somebody who doesn't have a certain device, you're almost shocked at this point.
Right.
At least in America.
Yeah.
You're like, well, what do you mean you don't have this? You don't have that? Like it's almost, you have to have it at some point. And if we're at the level where everybody's always getting the next thing, the new thing when it comes out, we got to start being seriously conscious about what we're doing with the old before we get into a situation where it's going to take years and years and years to reverse what's been done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's perfectly said.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon for y'all? What's up and coming?
Yeah. So, we've really got big plans for our e-recycling division. Wanting to build awareness with our customers. That's why you're seeing the slight rebrand from Secure Shredding and Recycling to Secure Shredding and e-recycling. We want people to know that's a focus for us. Most of our customers, this is a free service that is a part of and in addition to what they're already paying for us to pick up and handle their data destruction from a fiber and paper perspective. So, making sure they understand that, making sure they're utilizing it, We're typically coming there every month anyway. So, make sure that you're protecting your data, but also make sure you're not throwing away these electronics that have a lot of value to others in the marketplace. And so, getting that word out to 5,000 plus people, you would think, oh man, we'd just send an email blast, right? Well, I think we've all deleted enough spam emails in our time that we don't necessarily read everything, right? And so I know I don't. I mean, I get tons of stuff that I should look at that I don't, and so it's going to take a while, but we're positioning it in the marketplace as something that is either low cost or no cost, and gives our enterprise clients a real opportunity to do the right thing for end of life electronics. In addition to that, you'll see a lot more community events coming up, trying to make sure that we're giving people that resource. And then, of course, whether you take it to CRC or you bring it to our facility not too far down the street from there, that's always an option as well. So really, and we've got facilities in just outside of Dallas, Birmingham, Baton Rouge, going to continue to grow that footprint, and just continue to get the word out, and hopefully get some support from the regulators to really make sure that this stuff is not ending up in landfills anymore.
Yeah, you got to really push them on figuring out how to get a tax credit for it.
Well, there's a lot of options when you talk about the amount of value that some of this stuff has. So if you look at what the state does now, the state auctions off all of its old IT equipment because they have it in such volume.
Oh, yeah.
Now, whether or not it going to the highest bidder is the right thing to do with it, or whether it should probably be, we should make sure that it's going somewhere that it's properly sanitized and disposed of. That's something that we are continuing to have conversations around. But we've got a great relationship with the state. We have the state shredding contract, the state hard drive destruction contract. So very blessed to be doing business with them. And I'm seeing momentum around people recognizing the cybersecurity piece of it, but also the environmental piece of it. And we've got some great young legislators that we're talking to that really, really understand it and really think it's important. And I think you'll see Louisiana make some big strides here in the next, 12 months or so.
That's awesome, man. Excited to see what's coming. So before we get you out of here, though, we do have a set list of questions we ask every guest.
Okay.
First one is, what is something you did as a kid you wish you could still do today?
Let's see. Something I did as a kid that I wish I could still do today. Probably play baseball. Had a lot of fun playing baseball growing up. I'm, too old and too slow now, but I enjoy playing it with my son, and he's obsessed with it. I would say play well at golf, but I think I might be able to eventually get back there one day. But I used to be a pretty good golfer, and work gets in the way of recreation. So
that it does. So you've been through a variety of life stages of companies and entities forming, selling, merging, acquiring, etc. What are like 3 lessons that you've learned along the way?
So I would say the first thing would be people over process, right? I think we get caught up in trying to process our way out of everything, trying to optimize everything. But if you don't have the people around you, you don't have a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to carry you where you're going, really. I mean, that's my attitude on leadership is like, I'm here to serve and, be the guide, not the hero, because they've got to be the heroes. And we've been very blessed to have people across the organizations that have embraced that and become that. I would also say that, lean on mentors. My first business that we started, I had a great mentor. He's still a great mentor to this day. He was our first investor. I have many of those now that I lean on and look up to. Wisdom is the only thing that if you're willing to listen, you don't have to earn by getting beat up, right? You can read and talk to people and hopefully borrow some wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I would say that is, and then, the last thing is be willing to pivot, right? Like, there's a fine line between doing what you said you were going to do and being stubborn. And so I think the doing what you say you're going to do piece of it has more to do with the way you go about it and the integrity with which you go about it, right? It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to be flexible and change your worldview or your market view, because the market's going to change.
Right.
Right. And so be willing to be flexible, be willing to be wrong. Right. I mean, and I say this all the time. I would rather get it right than be right. And that means more to, like, that's the kind of people that I want to be with, people that want to get it right. They don't care whose idea it is. They don't care who ended up being right about the argument or the strategy, right? But we get it right together.
Yeah.
And so I would say those are probably the three main things.
Love it. What is something you love about Baton Rouge?
Well, as I mentioned before, it's nice that my family's here. I've been here. Really, I was born here, and then I lived in Shreveport until the 6th grade for most of my youth, and then was back here from the 7th grade on. I love LSU, diehard LSU fan. That community and the way this community is kind of centered around the university is really cool. But there's also, I think it's an up and coming place for entrepreneurs and for people that are really out there trying to create things. I've been blessed to know a number of them, and I think there's a specific culture to South Louisiana that you just don't see anywhere else in the country, world for that matter. It'll always be home.
Oh yeah, we got something unique about us.
Yeah. There's a resiliency there.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, I think that's when I think about what I want for my kids, that's the word that always comes to mind. Right. Be resilient, and whether it's the things that we face together from storms and economic issues and everything else, right? There's a resiliency here that you don't get everywhere.
Absolutely. So for the final question, what can I do to help you?
Well, I appreciate you just giving me this platform to hopefully get the word out and educate people on how important this issue is around the proper disposal of electronics. And it's something that has become a passion, and it extends beyond just what we call our core focus, which is trustworthy data destruction. And it's like become this greater thing for us that is really about how much of this stuff can we get and get it back to the place that it should be. And there's a ton of it out there. And so it's been fun to watch that volume grow, but not just for financial purposes, but also just, to see what it becomes when you fulfill an order for, 2,500 laptops for a nonprofit that's going to donate them to some school, it's a cool thing.
Yeah, incredible little impact there in the community you get to feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming on. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing your story, your wisdom, and ultimately also what we all need to be doing a little bit better of.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. And thank you everybody else for watching or listening, whatever platform you're consuming us on. Make sure you do some education. Figure out what you're supposed to do with your household electronics. And if you're curious about what's got going on, just reach out to them and they'll take care of you. See y'all next week.